Hello. Hi, everybody. It's Jatana here. JM, coming at you from the forest. It's another one of these here forest talks. And I've written some notes because I got something sort of specific that I want to talk about today, interweaving the spontaneity of this moment in this forest at this time with these trees, which you can see, most of which are quite skinny relatively. I'm sitting facing the biggest tree that I can see around. It's a pine tree amongst all these little guys, in a forest that some may say was possibly unkempt. I can't really speak to the validity of that, but yeah, it's a chilly day. It's the first of a January through December year, 2024. I come to you from Tennessee, East Tennessee in the United States. I am a little person, with senses, a mind, a heart, a belly, feet that are sometimes shoeless, amongst many other things. Today's chat is meant to be monumentous. I was wanting to decide if I would make sort of an admittance, a grand admittance about some beliefs that I have been brewing for many years. Wasn't sure if today was going to be the day that I was going to go for the gold, so to speak. And I'm still not quite sure, but I think I know that I can talk about all of what I'm going to talk about with or without this piece of information that for some of you may be very commonplace, and for others of you might make you hate me. Oh, spoiler. I mean, that's gonna just make you want to know what it is, but I'm probably not gonna say it today. But fear not, I will say it in other videos because it feels important. It feels important in general. It feels important for me to speak things that are real for me. And more so, in order to reach a coherence, I am practicing saying out loud and to other people, which in this case is you, things that I think about, things that I see, things that feel true to me. And that sort of dovetails with some of my first introductory points, which are about truth. As far as my perspective is concerned, here's my major preface. This whole thing is the world as I see it from my perspective, and I intentionally speak as much as my pace in consciousness will allow, with an awareness and in acknowledgement of the fact that I don't know everything. In fact, I know very little compared to the expertise of many people. And That being said, I think I know a lot more than that part of me gives me credit for. And I'm trying on this idea that we all know a lot more than we give ourselves credit for, most of us. That there is some state of being that's not very far from this very place where all the answers are available in the moment, in this moment. All answers that you have to all questions are available in this moment. That being said, there's parts of us that can't always see that. There's parts of me that I speak through that don't see everything in every moment. So I'm still in the preface. Part of the preface is I am young. I am born of a victim narrative. I have been trained to belittle my own insights, my own senses, my own conception, and I am currently in the process of becoming aware of how deeply and in what ways that's weaved into every ounce of my being and is conveyed through the way that I speak. So the reason why that preface feels important to me is because I don't feel ready always. I don't feel perfectly ready to speak to the world or others in a lot of ways on big topics that feel controversial or unusual or that I know are being heavily skepticized in our society, and it keeps me from talking about things that feel very real to me. And I have gone a long time keeping quiet, and I'm okay to continue to keep quiet. I intend to titrate my abilities, and I know that you can never say everything in one moment or one YouTube video. But it seems to me, based on what I'm hearing from the world around me, which is my path, my guide, my guru, if I have to use that word, because I'm going to use it later, is the all that is around me, including my body, my mind, my heart, my senses, my gut, all of it, the things that are pop culture words and the things that are true to me. The trees, the smells, the robots, all of it, they're my teaching ground. So what I've been hearing is that it's time to speak more, and part of why it feels so necessary to preface is because it's edgy. It may not be edgy for some people, and I know it's less edgy for me even than others. I've had practice, and I am pretty whimsical to an extent. So, and others are much more verbose with their opinions, and it comes easily to just announce what's true for them. But I have dedicated parts of my life to being diplomatic and careful, and part of that is a wisdom of meeting people where they're at and being tactful and artful with what I bring. And part of that is fear. I have to acknowledge that. Part of that comes from a deep and long developed, seated phenomenon, which is the case for many of us in our history as a beingship, that speaking in ways that are counter to popular belief systems on a collective level or a specific level has a history of bringing great strife to oneself. And again, this all could just be simple and obvious, or a new way of putting it, but yeah, I think it goes without saying that there's a long history of social exile and family exile for speaking about things that make other people feel uncomfortable ultimately, and that don't fit into how people want to see you on a personal level, me on a personal level, or things people don't want to have to think about or entertain. And my practice is to, I don't know, in a way it just seems so simple to say certain things, like it's like, this is real, like the Bigfoot, he's real, fucking duh. And you ask certain people, you talk to certain people, and it's like blasphemy, like how could you just say that? And now I have to think differently of you. And so it's a very paradox, is going to be another thing that I talk about in this video. Paradoxical to even have to do such a preface, because to me it's all this stuff I'm saying is like almost so simple and commonplace that I shouldn't even have to say it, but I've come to maybe begin to theorize that it is worth saying, and I don't even know exactly why, but or who or when. But the preface continues. I'm practicing speaking, and part of that is an invitation for myself and for anybody listening to take it with a grain of salt, as I try to do with most everything. In a way, it's a puzzle piece. It's part of the story. It's everything that everybody else says and does is a metaphor, ultimately. And reality is multifaceted, and it's filling in the gaps as it goes, and my consciousness as well. So I've been graced this life with an amazing propensity to take the long term tactic to let myself take in the world over time and to veer away from drawing grand conclusions prematurely, as I've found that conclusions, though useful as a play attempt, they don't always serve me in the long run, because we're ever evolving and because I'm growing. That's one thing I realized from a young age, is like, wow, every time I had a new realization about something, I felt like such a dodo that I didn't know that before. How could I have gone on thinking that things were this way and even speaking that things were a way, when then I realized later that they were so different and people knew and I didn't know. And so I'm in the middle of the process of realization, and many things that I say are only from one moment and later on might be different or realized by myself or others to be, I don't even want to say untrue. I want to say short-sighted or miniature. And from my vantage point, am okay in this moment, finally, with speaking things in this moment for the process of discovery and intrigue and mind play and body play that I may find out later are different or have more to them that I didn't say, and that it still feels important to me in this moment to speak. So, am I almost done with my preface? I have had the honor to be able to choose stories and metaphors and ways of understanding things that suit this person, this current composition of elements in its form as it is, which is different than yours, and also made of all the same things, sure, but for this period of time and space, it is constituted in a certain composition that requires and demands and filters certain things in a certain way, some of which I decided, some of which I didn't. And I am in the process of unveiling the way that I am. And part of that is allowing myself to choose metaphors and storylines and narratives and ways of looking at things that help me to temporarily or otherwise make sense of this existence, to learn from this existence, and at any point, whether sometimes harder than others, to let go of the tools that I've used and the narratives and stories that have helped me, that they don't need to be fact. They don't need to be my truth forever. They can be my truth now, or they can just be something that is helpful to me now. And I'm incredibly grateful for this propensity that is seemingly inherent or easy-ish for me in this life to pick up stories and ways of looking at things and use them or honor them or play with them and then let them go. And I don't know that that is as easy for everybody or as natural. And so that's part of the end of my preface, which is that anything that I'm going to say, it would be my delighted pleasure if you would take it or leave it. Use it as a metaphor. If I say something that sounds like I'm saying it like fact, but you don't think it's fact, that's totally fine. I probably don't think it's fact either, even if I accidentally say it that way. But, make it malleable. take parts of it or mull it over and then be like, meh. And my invitation to all of us would be, if I could invite all of us from an open place, would be to say things, but also hear things in a sense, with a sense of lightness, that we could all talk and be received in a way where we're able to play with existence and concepts and not need to sound so certain in order to try something on, and also not need to defend it to the death in order to play something out. And so, if it is your need or tendency to cast people aside for their opinions or their statements or their presentations, then that may just be where you're at right now, and you need to continue to do that. But if it were to be a request I could make of myself or anybody, it would be to hear me out, because if you want to, because I came here from a genuine sense that it may be beneficial to all of us, or entertaining or intriguing to hear the thoughts that I'm about to weave, and if they are a disservice to your mental state by causing you a bunch of distress, then just frickin' throw them out if you need to, or maybe just listen to the whole picture and let it flow through your awareness and to formulate itself in a way that is harmonious to how you see things, and all the rest of the debris will just fly away in the wind. Because ultimately, I mean no complication. And I know sometimes simple things that people say can bring up, that's what's happened to me, can bring up so much internal strife in my mind and body and heart, because they say something that doesn't fit into how I see things. I may be flexible with stories and narratives, but I'm deeply affected. I have been deeply affected by how people say things, and sometimes I've had to go into a deep, I'm just going to say it, spiral, because somebody said something and they were a person that I trusted or I felt differently about, or I didn't want to hear that at that time because it broke down something that I believed that was holding me up in a way. And so I have had to go through this process of being hurt by simple things that people say, or being caused complication by simple things that people say, because it was of an imposition to my framework. And so the continued, I have a little hole in my hood, and repeated invitation again is just that the preface, the end of my preface is that this is just me playing, and it's a protection of me, but it's also a hope of humanity in a way that we can begin to allow people who don't want to say things for fear of being chastised or misunderstood, if they want to, or if there's ever a space for that, to have more fluidity and play with concepts, so that we don't have to be, I don't know, I apparently have to argue right now, but things are ramping up in a certain way where if I were to listen to you, I would hope that I could do what I'm inviting you to do. Take it with a grain of salt, leave what doesn't work for you, and take a long-term perspective so that you can get to the end and not just cast me aside unless you must do so in order to maintain something for yourself, which is your absolute and encouraged right and duty. So, so I take on perspectives and storylines that I am willing to learn later on aren't as true. And that has led me to entertain some fascinating and sometimes quite controversial ways of seeing what's going on here and our existence, which leads me to wonder, am I going to say the thing? Or am I going to skirt around it today and say the thing later? I think I'm going to skirt around it today. It's not a hoarding of some big secret. You may just find it super simple. I think I'm just going to leave it simple for this conversation, and I can do a supplementary video with that piece of information. So this piece of information that I'm skirting around is just something that I've come to feel is more true than other things I've heard about human history, and it has put certain things that I'll discuss into a perspective that has had me being like, oh, yeah, okay, that makes sense. That feels more real than other things, and I don't even know what's real, and it's evolving all the time. So maybe it's just a metaphor, but I'm willing to entertain it because it's currently aligning with something inside of me that makes things make more sense right now. And I love that I can do that. And so then there's the zoom out, where it's like, okay, a small part of it is reincarnation, because that I feel like I can say out loud right now. A small part of it is reincarnation. So say reincarnation, which I currently believe is the truth for how I see this reality right now. Say that is part of the truth. The zoom out is like, okay, yeah, but really this is all just a simulation. So reincarnation is just a part of the simulation, and none of it matters. I believe that too. It's a metaphor to me that feels true, and I currently still live in reality as if it is a hard thing. Like, I know that I've been told that particles have space in them, and the actual matter is very small, so really form is not form, but I currently can't bend the spoon yet. Maybe I shouldn't even say that, but I still live in this reality, or whatever this is. I still live in a body of form, and maybe it will fly later on. I think so. But it's a simulation, and there's still rules to it that I'm learning. And yeah, maybe somebody or something, or however you want to look at it, made that all, and it's not really, and we're ultimately freaking a rainbow cloud in a different parallel universe where it wouldn't even be called a cloud because it's not even a form. Whatever. There's still rules about the composition and reality that I'm in right now that I feel obliged to discover more about in order to continue existing on the day to day. So that being said, I learned so much from and this may sound silly, I learned so much from a TV show, but I learned so much from Westworld. I received so many realizations that felt like truths to me from Westworld, which is you can escape out to the next layer, and then there's just another layer. So, in a way, I've heard that makes us feel imprisoned. I don't feel imprisoned because I came here to do this, and it's fascinating to me as much as it fucking hurts sometimes, and I don't get it a lot. I'm here to expand and discover. So, call it what you will. But yeah, the storyline, although so much of history, like I'm in a woods that they say, and this is another point I wanted to touch on, they say is previous Cherokee land. So we're right in the Trail of Tears zone. And when I say they say, it doesn't mean that I don't believe that. It just means that I know that there's probably so much more to the story than even people who really know, more than me, know. And if I tapped into it, I might be able to discover more, but I wouldn't bring that to you necessarily as truth, in that we all have a different vantage point, and I am a seemingly present day traditionless person who doesn't know where my ancestors lived and didn't get a lot of their information passed down to me directly through my parents and grandparents, and I'm, your frickin' modern day young American, superficial seeming, unwise, so to speak. Like I'm a blank slate for all intents and purposes. So that can be terrifying in a way, really. There's all this story about, the people that came before us, the cultures that lived here before me. I even think about it. They knew the land so much better than me. They knew the animals. They knew how to exist here seemingly so much better than me. And I'm willing to acknowledge that. And also, I don't know. And I'm working with what I have right now. And I am finally becoming less and less able to diminish myself. And I get that could sound like, oh, I just get to decide that I'm great right now. And actually, yeah, I can get to decide my greatness right now, because we actually all are tapping into the same things and in a different way. And this story that because I didn't come from a certain thing, and like the comparisons are endless basically, and I will, compare all day till the cows come home. But the cows have moved to a different part of the land, so I don't anticipate them to be coming back to this area soon, but I just can't say that for sure because things change fast around here. But the point is that it seems like the trajectory is that I will have to soon grant myself audaciously with the ability and badge of honor to be able to decide what's true for me, to tap into what's here now from a place of ignorance, vulnerability, and seeming cut-offness, because the other option is to let myself to be enslaved by comparison and by other people's assessment of my worthiness of knowing and listening. So yeah, I sit here on recent supposed Cherokee land with all due reverence and honor, and I acknowledge that we came from a deep and long history of slavery, to put it simply. So one caveat or side note's probably more appropriate, is that that I wanted to say is that there's this conversation going on in my sphere right now about, like, how much of what you think and what you know to be true is just something somebody told you, or something multiple people told you, or something the algorithm showed you a whole bunch and makes you able to reproduce it as if it's fact. And that is a fair question that I ask myself, and also sometimes keeps me from wanting to say anything, because I'm like, what do I really know on my own? What am I not just repeating, like, rotely and crassly, as a matter of fact? And I mean, there's multiple parts of that. One is which, do we ever not get something from other people? Just because it comes from other people, does that make it less true? But also, I do filter what I say. I am conscious, as I am right now, about not just repeating things that I heard just because I've heard it enough on the internet, or from the people around me even, or from people I trust even. Because I don't know, I think the social media makes us sort of quick to jump on to bandwagons, and that's okay and part of the process. So I am aware as much as I can be of that, and attempt to not just like constantly spew things that are just quick reads from the internet, and acknowledge that I'm the chooser of what's, the feeler of what's true for me. So if I feel it's true for me because somebody else said it, then I am going to be so bold as to repeat it, if it feels relevant, and hopefully with some tag that it may have come from somewhere else or someplace, and an awareness of where it came from, and that to use it flexibly. But quiet break. I don't always completely, fully understand why certain things seem true right now and relevant to say, and if anything that I hear from anybody else is just not verifiable. And I would like to just be pretty honest about where I'm at, and able to use things that have come to me with a statement of purpose for the intent of playing with thoughts and ideas. And so when I say they say, it's like I'm that blank slate, I don't talk like I know a lot, because I feel very changing, and because so much has changed for me that I thought was true, and I've learned more that people have told me, or society, or that I learned in school, that was like dead fact, and that actually was the foundation of all these other pieces of thought that I then realized was faulty and took away my whole understanding of something. And so I am at a new place of a deep knowing of what feels true for me, and a softness with how I hold it. And so that being said, the story and what I know to be true from this vantage point is we come from a really, really vast history of blah. I use the word slavery because that's just one of many words that encompasses the darkness of what our culture as beings, as humans, have endured. So much deep, dark nefariousness, and of course, meanwhile, there's been music and enjoyment and beauty and magic and love and food and all kinds of other things. But the thing that can't be ignored, that is connected to this piece of realization about where we came from, is where I came from. Oh, that's the other thing, is I want to speak from my own perspective as much as possible, because there's this way in the internet right now that just feels very much like, if you're going to say something, you have to say it like you know it, and you have to say it in a way that elicits this sense of authority over other people, and if you're not going to, then don't say it at all, or you're not going to get followers. Well, I just want to speak as much as possible in a way that helps you to understand that this is all a metaphor, because I am not you and you are on your own path. So everything that you hear from me must, in a way, according to how the brain works, be taken as a metaphor. So I'm practicing speaking from my own experience so that you will know that I'm not trying to impart anything on to you, but I am sharing what's real for me, take it or leave it. So I feel, and have for so long, this insistent need to acknowledge how messed up and terribly corrupt this world, my people, these people, and me have been. Increasingly because it has sometimes been possibly overlooked. What I mean to say is that through this social media experience, there's the tendency to want to just be encouraging and to not bring other people down, or that's part of it, or to bring people down. I don't know, it's both. That will bring me to the paradox topic in a little bit. But I don't know. I guess I see it might be my Scorpio moon thing. I have the need to acknowledge the darkness in lieu of ignoring it, because it feels like a part of me. It feels like a part of what I see every day in everybody. And when we just sweep it under the rug and pretend that we're all just children of God and we're supposed to be polite and you don't do certain things because mom and dad said so, this just feels like some bullshit to me. Hypocrisy, which is okay as long as we're acknowledging that we came, I think, from some really dark beings somewhere in our history. It might not have been in our direct family. It may have been. And yeah, the idea is that when we were much more barbaric than we are now, those were the real dark people and that we're weeding them out, which is obviously, not true, seemingly. I want to acknowledge openly, and that's part of me speaking in a way where we can actually come together over it rather than tearing people down or bringing them down into a misery. More just like, let's just look at it for what it is. And that is sort of the topic of this whole video, which is the necessary integration of the dual aspects, the light and the dark, the good and the bad, the acknowledgement and inclusion of the reality of what we're working with, that we come in our genes, in our consciousness, from a story, from a history, from a collection of beings that are not kitchen table polite and do not get along with everybody in their kindergarten class and don't follow the laws and rules. And it's not about sin. It's not about what do you call it when somebody's like it's not about demonic presence. I mean, we're not going to get into that right now. I'm going to check my notes because I'm getting ahead of myself. We come from a long history of being enslaved. So we have a lot to feel like we need to retaliate for. Because that's the question over life. It's like, if I'm a good person, if I see so much joy and I just want to live with peace on earth, then why are people still demolishing other people? Why are people still doing horrible injustices to other people that I would like and think would be horrible? They could be my family members. They could be young children. How could that be if I feel like the love that I feel and the person that I am, and I would never do certain things, but I have done certain things that have been extremely painful to other beings? So this is the question, is can we continue? I don't think we can. Can we continue to go on following the rules as school taught us, that you don't do certain things because it makes other people sad, blah, 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 which, like, there's truth in these things. But that was never enough to stop children from hurting each other. That was never enough to stop adults from hurting each other or hurting children or whatever. That's never been enough. The story of be nice and I'll slap your hand about it and I'll whack it out of you. It hasn't worked. Surprise, surprise. Shoot. It hasn't worked. So it has led me to be like, what is that? What is that? Is that we came from our lizard brain wants to go out of our way to absolutely destroy other people? That's never seemed like enough for me. So this story of, however far back it goes, a long history of being enslaved by more wise beings than you. That story of like, the conquerors come and they're like, we're more civilized. We need to impart on you our wisdoms. This idea that there's someone that's more wise than you that came to tell you, I have bigger weapons, I have bigger nefariousness, I get to tell you what to do and you'll do it. And then you're actually are sort of subservient to that purpose for a whole bunch of other reasons. Go forth with being enslaved as a being that feels autonomous but hasn't been, because you've been easily. I've done it too, and that's a extrapolation, but I can see how it's easy from where we came from to be subservient to something more, seemingly more powerful than you, hence the victim martyrdom consciousness thread. So there's lots to have a sense of retaliation for. And retaliation is a concept that I have seen in myself, in my direct sphere, a lot. It fuels endless amounts of unjust hurt, the feeling of needing to protect yourself or to get back what you've given willingly, but you probably think unwillingly. Checking my... Oh, there's that tree accidentally. Okay. So this reality thing, I thought I was trapped. I used to think, it was just whatever. You're stuck in it. It's infuriating. It miserable. It just shows you back all of your worst things a lot of times, over and over. You can't go through it. I mean, you can't jump over it. You can't skip it. You can't numb it. It never works. You've got to go through it. So here we are going through it, seeing all of the, bearing witness to the horrors and the joy, of course, because that stuff's easy to bear witness to, but we always want more of it, and never being able to reconcile why we can't have the peace on earth that we so repeat and want to just be satisfied all the time. You must go through it. We're here. We must continue to look and to experience and to endure great strife and discomfort for some reasons. So we have come here sort of as like, well, I did. That's how I feel. I've a lot of times in my life have felt like I came here just trying to be sort of like a golden, like, light of love, and I just wanted to hold hands with my whole family all the time, and all of a sudden there's this immense weight of millions of lifetimes of travesty and corruption and retaliation around every corner. And especially, like, I'm in the depths of Tennessee, for whatever your perspective is of this country and culture. The culture here, it's inescapable. And, it's not everything, and we're so much bigger than that. That's the point of this whole thing, or so much more than that, but I'm the kind of person that has to acknowledge it. So you come here, I came here, the weight has been so much to bear so often, and so hard to reconcile for the mind and the minds. And you think it's not, I was like, it's not mine, I'm not that person that did all that cruelty. Well, it's in my system, it's in my blood, it's in my memory, whether that's because it's been pumped through a conception of what our history has been, or I feel it viscerally, probably both. But I've always had this sense, and this is what happened to me a couple years ago. I became sort of like focused on this idea of, well, I had to liberate my inner selves, basically. I became sort of aware of this way of looking at the psyche, my psyche, which was that there's parts of me that are fucking angry, and they have not been listened to, seemingly, and so they will take any opportunity to go off on any person, probably someone who was being into, like, getting to know me deeply, but just, seeing myself play out angry moments and all this pent up stuff that felt out of control, and I felt just like a totally vulnerable to my inner workings, and just like up a creek without a paddle, or down the waterfall, quite frankly. And this way of looking at things became evident to me, to see that to look at these, like, it's inner child work. It's parts of you that are inside that haven't been listened to, that you've been just repressing because you were trying to be polite and you didn't really know what they were saying, and it was terrifying because they were inconvenient and not how you thought you should be acting, or other people thought you should be acting, and so don't listen to them, just stash them away. So there was a whole basement of little kids and otherwise parts of me stuck, just like raging at any point when anybody would even try to listen to any part of me, or they would just, come out. But they were still trapped, so they would come out in this raucous way where nobody knew it was happening, not even me, and it would just freak everybody out. And I'm an intense person, so it would really freak people out. And I became aware of this need to, unbox them, treat them like little children. So open the basement, and if you treat them like children, for me, that's easy to be like, oh, gosh, I wasn't even feeding you. You were trapped in a basement. Of course you were mad. You were fucking freaking out because you were trying to survive, and you had years of me not paying attention to you. Like, that's straight up neglect. It's easy for me to be compassionate to a little child that hasn't been fed and is obviously just going apeshit. And it's also like, oh, you just wanted acceptance and love. So I started thinking about myself as like, it's the mother archetype. It's the master integrator. It's the most ideal kindergarten teacher, the person that can, because once you let them out, and it's been a long time, once I let them out, and it had been a long time, they were fucking pissed, and they did not trust me at all. They didn't want to believe that anything that I had said had been true, because of course I had been telling them lies for their whole lives. Like, just stay there. Just, here, take this little crumb and be a good girl now, because that's what we need for you to do in order to be okay in this world. No, kids are smarter than that. They were smarter than that. They're just like, fuck that shit. We're not taking anything from you because you've been manipulating us for years, which another metaphor I see in my years of babysitting. I've seen that in the most well-meaning parents, because it's a part of our cultural tradition to manipulate children, which are humans, which are now adults, to be manipulated into behaving, and by the people that they trust and love the most, they are constantly manipulated just for the sheer convenience, to put it simply, oversimply of their parents. So anyway, they didn't trust me, so I knew that it was going to be a shit show for a while. They were going to be running around when I let them out. They were going to be needing a lot of attention and, healing and love, and that in order to eventually gain their trust, I was going to have to become a more attentive, appreciative, and tactful caregiver, and much less mindlessly manipulative. And the master kindergarten teacher that we all could have loved would be able to somehow allow all of these beings to coexist in a classroom, so to speak, a being, some of which actually just by nature do not get along. They're just very different and want different things, but we exist in a being that has to, I think, be harmonious. That was my goal. I have to stop just flailing around hurting people. Like, if I am going to attend to the injustice of this world, I have to see it in myself. I have to be in full acknowledgement of it in myself, which is terrifying. Like, I have to understand, why do I do these things that I wish I didn't? I can't just sweep them under the rug and be like, I don't know, you did something mean to me. It's like, no. I knew what I knew. I wanted peace on earth, and still I caused great harm to somebody that I loved. And my scope of it is much seemingly smaller than things I see, but in order to say anything to anybody about wanting kindness or boundaries or anything, I have to understand that on a deep level, an integrated level, rather than just saying things like, oh, because people are nice, because you hurt me. Like, it's been the reckoning. So yeah, that brings me to the next point, which is the story of sin, which, moving to Texas from the West Coast, one of the first things that happened was I kept encountering churches. Surprise, surprise. Like, I would just be riding my bike at night or something, and I would kept coming upon the church. And, strange that it took me so long to start thinking about this, but I started to think more and more about how much religion is, and a certain religious storylines and doctrines are pumped into us. Even and why this was like any sort of surprise to me was because I grew up not being religious. My family was not religious at all. But I started to realize more and more and more and more, like arriving at the door of a church again and again, like, this is so deeply in me, even as a person that never went to church. This is so deeply in me. And the stories, like, I'm not going to go too far into that because, there's truth and actual history in a lot of that, some of which I know, some of which I don't. But I must understand that these ideas have been instilled in me, even as a person who thinks I'm not religious at all. Of course, it's part of our culture. And so this idea I have been sort of like snowballing on more recently has come to the idea of sin. That this explanation of human history that I have now had a difference in opinion about, is that I don't even fully understand it or know what they're saying, what people are saying, because it's different for a lot of people, but I wasn't taught it firsthand. But the idea that there is an original sin, that is actually what caused this deep wrongness and darkness in humans, is that there was some sort of like dark moment, or like a moment where we chose something that then made God mad at us, and ever since then we've been just flinging shit for no reason while he punishes us and tries to get us to do right, because we're just stupid little humans that can't figure it out, and we're greedy and all of these things. Again, a metaphor. Like, there's no one reason why such injustice, but I didn't even really think about that whole story, but it didn't satisfy something in me, which was like, still, no, why? Like, I don't think it's just we evolved from like small to big, and then all of a sudden, like, we're just meanies and we're gonna like evolve out of it or something. It's like, just didn't quite fit. So I've just been realizing more and more recently this like deep programming of unworthiness, this story that we should be ashamed of ourselves for being a human, for being sinners that do things that are gross, and for good reason. We're greedy, fucked up little... It's kind of hard to explain for me at this moment, but I don't know. I'm more sort of like satisfied by this idea that there's some deep retaliation, that there is a justified reason for the progression of why we had to go through this like terrible, and it's so hard to talk about without getting into some like details that I've learned about how things went, but I haven't been satisfied by this idea of like the original sin, and the point, seemingly, in any great lesson that could be learned from this world as I see it, it dovetails with this idea of the grand kindergarten teacher and the fact that we've been created by both the most majestic, amazing, light, wise, Christ-like, just like loving beings, that we feel that, like, how could we feel all of that and still ever at any point, me at my level, like, how could I ever have access to that and then still do hurtful things? That one of the most overarching lessons of understanding and consciousness that I've been aware of my life is how to integrate that. Okay, yeah, I'm still stuck in this reality where it's a dualistic reality. So on the level of emotion, you have to both experience great joy and also great hate. Like, then how do those work together in a way where, how do they work together in a way that's actually sustainable, that's actually in acknowledgement of that, so that it somehow still exists in its stark contrast, and also is not just sustainability, that you can celebrate that you can err on the side of it's hard. That's the thing. From the collection of words that we have, which are inherently dual, there's no way to describe what I'm trying to get at in this moment without delineating something that is inherently a paradox. And that's one of the hardest and most beautiful things about being a human that I've experienced, is that it's a paradox, and I am constituted of a dual system. So it's like the triangle meeting the square. It's like they're different. The triangle meeting the line. It's like you can't speak to it, because if you could speak to it, then we wouldn't all be fighting. So yeah, so in that that like deep sense of needing to retaliate for how hard it's been, and how much taken advantage of is in our memory and history, there's always the tendency to either have the guru, to have the savior, or to have the sinister, the demon, the something to blame. You're either looking for something to save you in the victim martyrdom of a long history of slavery, to save you from what you can't help yourself with, or you're blaming the perpetrator. And blame is deep in my consciousness, in my system, in the way that I work. I've seen it play itself out time and time again. Yeah, the need to have somebody to blame for my discomfort, or to, because that, rightfully so, it's been pretty fucked. So yeah, that creates this mental tendency to either, to think like, to have to watch your back, to feel like you could be overtaken at any moment, because that's the paradigm of the guru or the perpetrator, that somebody else is wiser than you, and somebody else is coming to get you. And the ability to reach new horizons of awareness is it's like it's a maturing, it's a taking ownership of your own being, of the era of the death of the guru, that until we can stop idolizing someone else or something else to compensate for our original sin, somebody else who knows better, who's done more, who's more worthy, who's more learned, who's more something, to come and save me from my ignorance and teach me and give me a certification so that I can be more worthy and then I can have the ability to tell. No, it's me. I am going to be the one to decide. On some level, decide is a word. I am going to be the one to choose at some point in time my own guru-ness for myself only. And that's the world that we're coming to. Gosh, I have so much more to say. That's the world that we're coming to, is an integration that every person is naturally encouraged to be aware of their own experience, that there is something deeper, wider beyond this tiny one person, and that truth is mine to decide. And this is going to become very relevant as the world changes, and I see videos all the time already that look like they look so real, but there's like something about them where I'm just like, I'm pretty sure all of us have thought some video that we saw was a real like person and it was generated. So obviously we're already seeing the war of the truths. Whose truth is more right and who's more capable of defending their own truth. And in the context of being the epic kindergarten teacher of all of our dreams, how can we all exist and have distinct truths? Truth! I'm using that word specifically. Truth is like we think it's like, if it's true for everybody. We can't pretend that anymore. We are all different vantage points, and there has to be a way that we can coexist sustainably so that we continue to live here without destroying the very ground that we exist upon, by acknowledging that there are parts of me that don't get along with other parts of me, that there are people right over there that don't believe the things that I believe in, but that is okay. Sounds simple, right? It's a long, rough road. It's going to be extremely confronting. I only say that because I feel like for the last 7 years, I was in a period of watching everything that I thought that I knew be destroyed in front of my very face by basically being mind fucked. I'm saying it. My reality has shattered. What I thought I knew has been demolished in front of my very eyes in a way that just makes me be like, what? Like, it breaks your whole system. That is what's to come if, I think, it seems like if there is not a sense of self-authority to be able to decide, own, and convey in a harmonious, to an extent, way, I will be even more destroyed. There, I wrote down the free fall. When you're free falling and there's nothing to grab onto, that's a really scary feeling when you don't know. Even though all of these videos and everything, it's like, we know, this is out, look, I know, I'm going to sell it to you, blah, 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 blah. You're going to have to be able to say that you know. I'm going to have to be able to say that I know for myself, and not say it to other people and expect them to accept that. No. I am going to accept for myself that it is enough, that I know what I know, and that is not the cliff that I cling to as I'm falling, but the person that I am as I'm accepting uncomfortable evolution, in that it's just kind of awkward. Because you're not like standing there posing on the cliff. You're now just like, ah! Because truth is going to be in question. It has been, I think, already, but it's more and more. It's going to be in question, and there is a subtle but extremely obvious freaking war going on for your mind, your truth. Your knowing, your sense of understanding is easily co-opted by the information. And I'm saying you, but I mean me. But I don't want to be saying like, believe me, because don't believe me if you don't. But that's how I see it right now. Witness that which you never wanted to see yourself as, be told you are. And sit in it, because we're not hung as much, burned at the stake quite anymore, but we are just while we're living, which is incredibly painful. Because, previously you were outcast, and you still can be. It's just under wraps. All the atrocities are just more like glammed. So time, there's never enough time. It's never the right time to fall apart. It's never the right time to fall apart. Nobody wants to fall apart. Nobody wants to be shattered. It's never a good time. But one thing, strangely, that I've learned, or that I've seen in my experience of time and space, is that, and this is another tricky thing to explain because it's a paradox, but unless I give myself, it's almost like using a timer to meditate. If you sit there, and this is my experience, may not be everybody's, but if I sit there without a timer, I'm not in a container. So even if I want to sit there for 30 whole minutes and I'm totally willing, I'm just like, I don't know when that's going to be. I'm always going to be thinking about time. So, and then I won't even do it. I'll end it early because I'm worried I'm not going to get there. And then I'll be like, well, I still have time, but no, I can't, because like, there's something for me about feeling like if I'm talking to somebody, a friend, if I feel like we have endless time, I'll be able to go deep into things really quickly and easily. Just like, but if I am like, oh no, I gotta get it all out right now. It doesn't, I don't know, it chokes me up. That's me personally. I know not all people have the same sort of like time, fears me. But what I'm trying to say is, unless I have the full understanding that I have as much time as I need, things, and then when I totally, fully believe that I have the space and time to take things as they need to be and let them evolve, they can happen quickly and easily. But if I'm like rushing it, or like, no, I'm not ready for that, I can't do that yet, like, no, I'll accept this, but not that, like, it's just like, you're like in the perpetual waiting. So there's never enough time to fall apart, but I've had to give myself the grace and other people of a full acceptance that anything goes. That's the paradox. You're on a tree. I can see that you're like slightly swaying. The paradox that even within acceptance, there's certain things that I don't want to accept. That I'm like, yeah, integrate all of it, but not that. Oh, but not that. Oh, but no, that's not going to work in there because I had it, like, it will only work if I just, like, it's like, all right, moving on. Yeah, it's in the body. Our body fights these things. Like, even if our mind thinks, like, yeah, I'm going to be the greatest integrator of all my kindergartners, the body is what all of this is experienced through. And if the body, the nervous system, all the other inner workings that I don't know the names of in the science for, the body holds a lot of memories of potential exile and death. Even from the feeling of being a little baby left in your crib crying it out, while your parents were downstairs having a party and you were just needed a hug or something to drink, but you were alone, like you felt like you were going to be there forever and you were going to die in a cell. Exiled from the people that loved you the most. It could be very literal or it could be very accidental, and it's stored in the body, so the body wants to freak out. That's real. I've experienced that feeling a lot. The direness of something that other people are like, oh, you'll be fine. It's like, no, this stuff, that's why it's like, we talk about the darkness. Nobody wants to talk about the darkness because it's like, oh, yeah. It goes away. It's fine. Like, but we have to live through it in the moment. There will be a moment where we're actually in that place and you feel horrible and nobody can understand or help you. Even if they try, just feel that being in that moment is life that we're living. And there's no trite bullshit that will save you in that moment, except for whatever I've conjured in myself to hold myself tenderly through some of the darkest moments that we've been doing for so long, until we can see them for what they are and we can live them on purpose. Like a theater. So, yeah. I have to, regardless of how disruptive it is to somebody else to have to hear what's true for me, like, I'm going to be tactful. If, like, not everybody, maybe even this video freaking made somebody not like me that thought something about me, and that would suck. Maybe, but I I have to follow my inherent blueprint. My system is the only system that knows the way that my system will get through. And we can take inklings and inspiration from other people, but ultimately it's me. Alone, never alone, but alone, listening to my own self and my own world around me and noticing my own conclusions and trying to, like, playing the long game here. Body included, mind included, crazy as it can be, integrated system, ideal kindergarten teacher, listening. That's one thing. I don't know how I got this. I'm sure, whatever, comparison. I like to listen. I like to take it all in before I talk or before I decide what somebody is saying. Even to the point where probably some people are like, you're just like, you're so quiet. You don't ever say anything. You just listen to other people. I don't know what people would say. I think I like to listen longer to what someone is saying, and to veer away from using the construction of how I see and understand things on the internet to put people in a way of understanding, because this world and we are so much weirder than everyday life would have you believe. In a miraculous way, we are capable of amazing freaking things, and we will come to see them more and more. But it's different than the boxes that we see. I know we all get that conceptually, but it's like, just because somebody's doing it, and actually a lot of people are showing you the way that they do it it's not, nobody's to blame or bad, but we're much more varied and wacky than we give ourselves credit for and that you see. And so your way may be something that nobody has ever seen, and it may feel weird to do it. It may feel weird to try something new. You might be trying to prescribe to, I've tried to fit. I've tried to do it the way that people, I try, and sometimes it works, and I want there to be more room for variation and creativity and artistry, so that it's not so freaking bland, and to be able to accept metaphor. The age of science is great, and there's also more magic behind it, and magic is just things that we don't quite understand yet, but that's where we're at. You can still use them. You can still be a scientist and know none of the terminology and not have gone to university, because I am accepting this universe that only I see and know as my teacher, even if nobody else understands what the heck I'm talking about or doing. And it looks weird, and it actually offends people for no good reason, according to me. I'm sure it's a great reason. Being seen by a tree is enough. The time it's nigh to trust yourself, and this is the caveat of sorts. I may have to trust myself through something that I later find out was complete bullshit. I might have had to trust my own system to tell me something that later I find out was faulty or something. But that's okay. That's the thing that is caught up in this whole perfect society veneer. We're playing. We're playing. We're playing, guys! Come on! That's what we've been doing this whole time, and somewhere along the line it got so serious. And you have leeway. You have time. I have time. I have leeway. I love how this universe is conveying itself to me, and it doesn't always make sense in a certain sense. So, yeah, it's real. Yeah, it feels serious. It is. And there's something else going on. And until we can graduate from the savior complex, waiting for even our parents to come rescue us from our own misery, it's me. So my phone's at 5%. I gotta go. It's getting dark. I'm late for a very important date. No date. Just me and you. Thank you for listening. Forest chat complete. I'll talk to you soon, okay? Let me know what you think or feel. See you.